Morning, everybody. This is John Scarborough and Savannah Scarborough. Today, I want to do a Q&A on our house build. Everything that a lot of people are talking about. Now, some of these questions are specifically on the house that we're building, and some of these questions are on other buildings that people have seen me build in the past. We intend to do more videos on this. We've been really busy, and we haven't actually started doing any more work on the house yet. There will be more videos coming out on that, I promise. But I want to do a video right now answering these questions because there's so many comments coming in. I just can't possibly give good answers to that. And some things are better explained in video form rather than in a comment. Not only that, there's so many of the same question that if I can just put a video out there, a lot of y'all can be answered with one good video. So without any further ado, Savannah's going to read the questions off to me, and I'm going to try to go through and answer them to the best of my ability. Some of the questions that are put out there are not the best, are not answerable questions. So we'll go from there.
Okay, so first question. Why not just gusset the truss peaks where you mentioned that they'll fail?
Okay, so the question is, why not just gusset the truss peaks where I mentioned they would fail? And I believe that this comment is speaking about where I was talking about welding, putting a little extra weld when you pick that truss up to make sure that it doesn't fail. First of all, the gusset is more specifically when the truss is standing. It helps keep it from failing in this direction. The weld that I was mentioning, if you'll go back and watch those videos, and we will link them in here and you can watch them in detail. The weld that I'm mentioning is up here when the truss is laid on its side. When you first pick it up, this is a one-time thing. When you first pick up that truss, it puts a lot of stress on that peak. If you know how to weld and you follow those procedures, you're not going to have any issues, okay? And that's been my experience, is you just don't have any issues if you do it correctly, okay? The reason we stress that is because I have seen people fail in that. I have seen people not do that correctly. If you feel that you need to put a little gusset there or something for extra insurance for yourself, be my guest. It's not going to hurt you. The reason I don't always gusset a building is because sometimes you'll see like a 30-foot building and you'll have a 15-foot gusset. This huge gusset on this building. A gusset is good depending on the size of your building. Like we put up a building one time, it was 75 foot tall, and we put a 5-foot gusset, okay? That's a significantly smaller gusset than the size of the building. The reason is when you build a gusset, when you put in a gusset, the weld, okay, imagine a truss like this, okay? Savannah, take your fingers and put it between my fingers. Right here. No, take your finger and run it this way.
No.
Right, make a truss. Make a truss for the camera. Make a truss. Show that. Okay, make more of a cornered truss. move your hands here. Just make a corner. Move these thumbs. Make a cornered truss. Okay, the gusset running this way. Okay, that gusset, the farther out you go, if you start to put a weld on those edges, if you got a 15-foot gusset and a 30-foot truss, you're putting a weld way out here. That takes the stress from your truss. It takes it off of your peak, okay? And it puts it out here. That load is far better supported in the peak. So when you take your truss, you put it together and your load is bearing down, it's designed to push and put the majority of that stress into your peak, okay? If you build a gusset that's so big and it brings all of that load, it brings it out here instead of right here at the peak, okay? So when it's too big, you can put stress in a part of the truss that is not designed to bear that load. That's why you don't always need to put in a gusset, okay? But a truss of 40 foot, which is about the size that we did out here, if you feel a little uncomfortable there, you could easily put in a 4 to 5 inch gusset, a little small gusset. You would increase some weld strength. You would help it when it is sideways and you pick it up. there would be nothing wrong with that. So if you feel the need to do that, absolutely go ahead and do that. Just always remember, sometimes over welding is worse than under welding, but you really just need to do a good job regardless. A job like this requires good quality welds one way or the other, especially when we're doing what we're doing and you're picking that truss all the way up, post and all, okay? And that brings me to another most common question that she hasn't read off, but I've read it so many times. This question is, why are you not standing your post individually and then standing your trusses, putting your trusses on top, okay? That is the most common question I think that I've gotten. And some people don't even ask why. They just say, you're an idiot. You shouldn't be doing it this way. I've been building buildings for this for such and such time. And, you know, it's one or the other, you know. So I want to address that question. The reason I'm doing it this way on this building is because we have 4 trusses, okay? I have built multiple buildings where, like our shop out here, okay? You're doing smaller posts, or like in the case where I did the container for our shop, and you can watch those videos on our channel as well. In that instance, I'm going to set the containers, or I'm going to set the post, and then I'm going to put my trusses individually on there. Another place that I would put the trusses, the post first and the trusses second, is when I have a lot of trusses. So like I'm doing wooden trusses. And that's what I've noticed. A lot of the guys that are making these comments, they use wooden trusses, or they're using smaller trusses or chicken house trusses. And those are all great options, okay? Like my brother-in-law, he built a hay barn. He built it out of all metal except the trusses. They were wooden trusses. So he puts 32 trusses in instead of 4 trusses on a building that was very similar size to this one out here, okay? When you do that, it's a lot easier to just set each individual truss after your posts are set up, okay? For one, the truss itself is super light. I mean, you're only talking, 150 pounds. 2 guys can almost manhandle it up there. There's a lot of videos on YouTube where guys do it by themselves. They set them upside down and they flop them up. So really it depends on what you have at your disposal, the equipment, but also, what makes sense in what you're doing. When we did that shop out there, we did a truss every 10 foot. Out here, it's going to be a truss every 20 foot, okay? And these trusses were smaller. So it made more sense, especially with the containers, to put our legs or containers or whatever you're using for legs, and then set the trusses one at a time. With that being said, when you do these larger, heavier trusses, you're putting heavy I-beams and everything's really heavy. The post is really heavy. Sometimes it's a lot easier to build it all on the ground. Like on that barn, we had to get up there with a tractor to each individual weld. We didn't have a man lift. Some jobs, if I'm doing the job for somebody, I have access to a man lift or whatever, but you don't always have that. And on that shop job, I mean, you can ask Savannah, we did all of that on a tractor with an old freezer strapped to it, and I stood on that old freezer. And so it's like, it's a lot easier to do as much welding and fab as you can on the ground. And one guy was complaining because he was saying, well, you can't get any weld on the backside. You may be that type of person. You may not have the skill that you can get a weld on the backside. I'm a professional welder. It's not a brag. Everybody thinks I'm bragging or flexing. I'm not doing that. It's just a fact. That's what I do for a living, okay? I do root passes all the time. I have to put welds in places you can't get to, okay? So for me, putting a root pass on a piece of I-beam is not a difficult task. So for me, it makes sense. I lay the truss down. I put a root pass. I know 100% I can get a weld under there. But here's the thing. If you can't confidently get that weld under there, and we go through more detail in that video, I highly suggest you go and check out the videos that we're going to link in this video, okay, if you have not seen them. But if you can't get under there, space your trusses farther apart. You can space that truss. Each truss can be spaced. I've only got them spaced 3 inches. But you could space them 12 inches apart, and now you can get a welding rod and just weld that bottom. And it's not a problem anymore, okay? If you're not good enough to weld like that, you probably shouldn't be attempting to do this job on your own. this is more for someone that has a little bit more skill in building, but it's also for someone that may be hiring this job out and they want to have a better understanding when they're watching the building crew, because you can absolutely hire somebody that is no good. There are a lot of metal building or building crews that do not put up good buildings. So I would absolutely encourage you, whether you do this on your own or you're hiring someone to do it, please have a little bit better understanding for yourself of how this goes together. Okay. I'm not claiming to be a pro. I have not been building metal buildings nonstop in my career like a lot of people have. Okay. I am a welder by profession and a fabricator by profession. Okay. In that trade, in that profession, for the last 13, 14, 15 years, I have been building metal buildings as well. We've built every building here on our homestead. Everything we've done that. But I've also done it professionally with professionals that's been doing it for 40 years. When I'm putting this building up out here, I'm consulting engineers that I know, and I'm consulting professionals that's been doing this for a long time. So I'm not just building this building willy-nilly. I'm putting this together with past knowledge, but mostly from people that I know and trust and have worked for, professionals that I've worked with. I'm not negating any other person's experience. You have experience. So there's one guy, he was talking about he insisted that putting the post up first is right no matter what in every instance. But then he started referring to his buildings that he's building, and he's referring to 20 and 30 foot buildings. Nothing wrong with that. That's very good. But he's never talking about these 65, 70, 80 foot wide trusses that we've put up, okay? That's not a bad thing, but when I put up a 20 foot building, I'm going to do it just exactly the way he's talking about, because it's easier. The material's lighter, everything's lighter. I can handle it all on my own. But once you get to this bigger building, there's so many things that are more complicated. There's so much more going into it. It becomes easier to just build it all on the ground, rent a big SkyTrack, and pick it all up. And we will have videos showing you exactly how this goes together. In my opinion, and we did the math, me and her, we sat down and did the math, because we have our own sawmill. We considered building the trusses out of wood and from our sawmill. Okay, that was the cheapest option. We considered buying all the lumber and building the trusses. We considered buying wooden trusses. We considered buying chicken house trusses. We considered building chicken house trusses, because I've actually been offered a contract from the government to build chicken house trusses. Okay, and I know I've got all the blueprints. They've sent them to me. I can do it. I know exactly what goes into it. Okay, I can also buy the used trusses, as I think I've already mentioned. We considered every single option. This option was slightly more expensive than some of the other options, but the time was so much faster. And I know that it's faster because I've done it every way. She's helped me with a lot of the ways here on the farm, but I've personally done it every single way in a job, like for somebody else. I've gotten paid to do it every other way. And when you have a lot of help, a lot of hands on deck, sometimes those other ways can be better because they are cheaper as far as money goes. But this way ended up being the best for us, because we can pay people when it's time to pay people, but we're not highly depending on other people. We do have to have heavier equipment to get the job done, just to get them stood up, but you can get the building stood up in a day. Okay, and that's the big thing, is that you can stand the building in a day very quickly. So it's different, but we decided for the both of us, considering our past experiences, considering that it's just the two of us, and we're at the mercy of hoping that, it's hard to find good help nowadays. Any professional out there should know that. Any professional out there should be able to agree that finding good help is almost impossible. Isn't that right, Savannah?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we run a full-time business. Not everybody on YouTube knows this about us, but not only do we have a homestead and a farm, but we're actually selling all of this stuff, and we're marketing all this stuff. And Savannah does a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff on that. And we're always looking for people to come and work part-time for us, full-time. And that's a whole business side. You know, it's Scarborough Farms of Louisiana. If you ever want to go check that out, just to see what we do, to see that it is a legitimate business. You'll see us behind there. So the point is we have experience in those places, and it's not always this cut and dry, easy, oh, let's just put this building up, you know. Another question that I know we get, and I'm going to let her read some of the questions. I remember a lot of these questions because I do go through and read every single comment. I don't think there's one comment on my YouTube channel in the last 6 years that I have not read. And I've commented to probably 90% of them. Some of them are just someone's just trying to be a troll. I don't comment to those. I'm not worried about it. There's no reason to. I'm not going to let those things bother me. 90% are good comments. 10% are bad. I'm just going to let the 10% roll off. Not a big deal. Part of being a man, for me anyway, I'm not going to speak from a woman's perspective because I'm not a woman. So part of being a man is letting things roll off that don't matter, you know. So then the other comments I don't answer to is comments. There's a handful of comments that I just literally do not know how to answer. Not because I don't know the answer, but a lot of times it's just, it doesn't actually apply. Like I don't understand how the question applies to the video. And so those I don't necessarily engage or comment to because I don't know how to. Okay. And that's probably my own inadequacies. And I'm admitting that. Okay. I'm not perfect. And then any others that I don't would be just some that like this video specifically, there's so many overwhelming amounts of comments and so many of them are the same. It's impossible for me to go through and comment. I mean, I wouldn't have time to make another video, and I definitely wouldn't have time to do anything else. Like after this video is done, once I'm done making this video, I'm going to Alabama and I'm going to go do a welding job in Alabama. Okay. And so, I mean, we're very busy. The both of us are extremely busy. So we really appreciate everyone being patient with us, but that's what this kind of video is good for. Okay. So that's what I'm trying to answer. Okay. What are some more good questions?
Okay, well, here's an easy one.
Okay.
At least I think it's easy. Short, simple, sweet.
Okay.
Why not use bolt-up connections between the column and the I-beam?
That's a good question. Honestly, if you consult an engineer and you do both of them correctly, now I don't do much bolt-up, okay? When I do bolt-up, I do a engineered building automatic. It's already an engineered, I buy the bolt-up. You know, if you do that, there's nothing wrong with bolt up, okay? And in fact, some places have to be bolt up. It's required depending on the height of the building. Weld up is a lot easier for me. It's a lot simpler. But not only that, and this is a personal thing. This is something I've seen. And when I speak to a lot of the other metal building construction companies, they all seem to have the same response, that bolt-up buildings, prefab buildings, are usually prefabbed for only what they expect to happen in your area. And that means as soon as you get a snow like we had in 2021, where it was an unexpected snow load, okay? Mm-hmm. We had just built our shop. That may have been in 2020. We had just built our shop. This massive 2-foot snow, which never happens here in Louisiana, comes down. There were prefab buildings all around us dropping to the ground, okay? Huge, massive prefab buildings that were engineered buildings, and they're all falling to the ground all the way around us. Thousands and literally thousands of videos. I do not think I'm overestimating that at all. A huge amount of buildings.
And I will say that when he was building the shop, and he was talking about snow load and stuff, and I was just kind of listening, just like, okay, yeah, whatever, snow. And yeah, it sure tested.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, because I want to build a building. Like when you see me building one out here, I'm overbuilding these buildings. I'm putting these buildings up stronger than is necessary. Like I'm not just depending on insurance. Okay. I want this building to last even when things come that are not normal. Okay. So I'm building this building extremely strong. So when it comes to the prefab bolt up buildings, there's nothing wrong with them. You just have to keep that in mind. And a lot of people did realize that very quickly, that the building did come down. And I hope all of them had them insured. But there were a lot of buildings that were welded together and they did not fail.
They might have
Bowed. They might have bowed a pretty good bit. Ours bowed down 1.5 feet. It literally, the peak of the truss came down 1.5 feet. Okay, because I marked it, and I mean, I was literally worried. I thought it was going to cave in, but the snow melted and it rose back up, and all the trusses were good. It flexed, it flexed a good bit, but those welds were solid. Everything was built very well, and it's just so that's my opinion on bolt up. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it at all, but that's my experience. I'm sure that there's a lot of other things, and you could definitely just over engineer. Like a lot of times, if I'm building a building for myself, I'm going to over engineer it because I'm building it for myself. That's the benefit of building it for yourself, is you can over engineer without overpaying. Okay. What are some other comments we got?
Okay. Why not a flux core wire for welding?
Why not a flux core wire for welding? That is actually a really good question. So you see this a lot in the welding industry, period. A lot of guys want to go to a wire because it is faster. And unfortunately, when you're welding outdoors, you're welding outside, what you see flux core and any type of gas, a MIG, a TIG, flux core, any of those things, you run the risk of wind coming in and blowing your weld and getting porosity. And I see it worse with flux core. Like if I was going to do this job with wire, I would have gone with MIG because I feel like flux core, I would have fought it more. Okay. So a lot of times when you come outside of a shop setting, you just end up running into all of these problems. If I'm indoors, if I could build this indoors, the whole thing would have been MIG. No problem. Okay. I would have definitely gone with MIG and built every bit of it because it is faster. Now, you do have to be careful when you're building with MIG, especially on something very critical like this, if you're having employees do it or if you're doing it yourself, because MIG is easy to put metal on and not know. It's easy to just pile the metal on and it not be tied in as good. The good thing about 7018 is even an ugly 7018 weld usually is fairly strong. Okay. Doesn't mean it's always completely strong. It doesn't mean it's as strong as it needs to be. Obviously, undercut is going to weaken it. Obviously, a better looking weld is always a better weld. But the reason that even an uglier, like that's why in the industry, a lot of times what you're starting to hear in sawmills and things like that, drilling rigs, you're not allowed to weld it with anything but 7018. And there's two reasons. Number one, flexibility. It's one of the most flexible rods in the world. In my opinion, it's the most flexible. Okay. But it's according to engineers, it's as flexible as some of the other ones. I like it better than anyone. I feel like that the tie-in, the heat transfer, everything is far superior. It is slower, okay? But for me, when I'm welding outdoors, I'm building something like this, or if I had other employees helping me, I'm going to go with that 7018. If I did have MIG, like if I went into a shop, I would make sure that I would grind off all of my mill scale because it doesn't want to burn off that mill scale so well. I would make sure that I'd still put in a good root. MIG is hard to put in a root, so that's one reason for not doing a MIG is I want to do some kind of root regardless because I need that weld on the other side. So if I was going to use MIG, then I would still probably end up welding 7018 on the bottom or at least taking a root rod, a 6010 or something, and welding in a good root. If you're any good at 60 or 7016 root rod, that would be a good choice, but most people are not good at that rod. But personally, unless I'm indoors, I'm just not going to hassle with the wire gun. I see a lot of guys, they say, let's do the wire gun, let's use it, and I end up having to cut out all of their work and then redo it with a welding rod. And I say that from a guy from the perspective that I would absolutely use a wire gun. I love a wire gun in an indoor setting. Okay, there you go.
Okay. I thought the other ones were simple. Let's try this one.
Okay.
This is simple. What size building are we building?
What size building are we building? So this building, so the house that we're building right now is going to be a 40 by 60 inside frame. That's going to be the inside of our building. Okay. And then we're going to have 14-foot roof overhang for our porches on both sides. So it'll be a 12-foot porch, like the floor itself, and then 14-foot on the ceiling. And then the porch itself will go the length, the full 60-foot length of the house. And we're considering putting a south-facing porch, so it'd be kind of a wraparound porch. We haven't decided yet. And if we do that, the south side will be an outdoor kitchen. So we're considering that. Y'all let us know what you think and what you would like personally. Like if this was your house, would you want to do a full wraparound or just porches on both sides?
How tall are we doing? 2-story, 1-story?
That is a good question. And so I'm going to answer the question. It's basically a 1.5 story. It's a story with an attic. Okay. So we're going to have a crawl space. So that's bringing us up a couple feet off the ground. And then we're going to have a full story. Okay. And then we're going to go up. We're going to have basically a tall attic. Okay. It's a walking attic that on the edges, I won't be able to walk all the way to the edges. So what we'll do is up in the peak, I'll be able to walk through about 8 to 12 foot, depending on how high I decide to make that, and be able to walk comfortably. My wife will be able to walk out more from there. And we can put rooms in there. We can use it for storage or whatever. But then on the outside, so you got your truss like this, and we're looking at 8 foot of the 40 foot, okay? Everything beyond that 8 or 12 foot, whatever it ends up being, like I said, we haven't decided. Everything beyond that will be a lesser, she'll be able to walk in some of it she won't be able to walk into. But that's going to be used for things like maybe AC. I don't know that I want AC in my attic. Some people have problems with that. But that's going to be used for a lot of different things. I'll be able to get to all of my electrical is going to be up in the attic and then run down into there. That way I can get to all of my, I'll have all my junction boxes right there. Everything's going to be right there, easy to get to. There's a lot of reasons to do that. I've spoke to a lot of people that's built their own shop style houses, and a lot of them agree 100%. If you can get that space up there, it's a lot better. So that it's going to be kind of a 1.5 story, 2-story style building. Now, the reason I like this one right here the most is because I've had people say, they say, oh, well, I'm an engineer or this or that. The way you're doing this is bad. It's wrong. It's going to fail. And then they never ask how many trusses. They never ask how many posts. They don't ask how far apart the truss is. They don't have any specs. Any engineer out there would, before they say it's going to fail, like you say, oh, well, you've got 4 trusses, it's going to fail. And then you find out that the 4 trusses are literally 5 foot apart. There's no building in this world that's 5 foot apart with 4 solid I-beam trusses that's going to fail. Okay. Now these are 20 foot apart. That's the way they are. And this is we looked up the engineering specs. This is very solid. We actually built over what the allowable tolerances are when we put in the I-beam. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. I don't do this every single day. So personally, I have to go and look at the specs before I can actually go and tell you an exact spec. And I'm not even going to tell y'all that. This is not me teaching you exact specs, okay? There are engineers, there are people that can work with you on exact specs. It depends on your building, okay? And that's why when people ask me as well, how big is your I-beam? I'm wary of answering that question because I'm like, okay, how wide is your building? How far apart are your trusses? How big is your C-purlin? All of those things make a difference. If you're putting a 4-inch C-purlin, your trusses need to be 10 foot apart or something. They need to be closer. You can't span 20 foot apart with a 4-inch C-purlin. The 4-inch C-purlin will cave in. It doesn't matter how strong that truss is, okay? So we're going with an 8-inch C-purlin on the 20-foot truss. So all of those factors matter. You first need to get your truss right, and then decide how far apart are you putting your trusses, and then get a stronger truss. This truss is a stronger truss than the truss that we have on our shop. The trusses on our shop are not as strong because they're closer together. They're 10 foot apart, okay? They're not as strong. Just like the trusses that you would do every 2 foot are extremely weak trusses, okay? But when you put them every 2 foot, all of that strength multiplies. Ultimately, a 60-foot building, regardless of whether you have 4 big, heavy trusses or 31 trusses. All right, guys, so it warmed up a little bit. I had to take my jacket off. So regardless of how many trusses you have, once you have that figured out, how strong your trusses are and how far apart you're putting your trusses, then from there, you're going to say, okay, if it's 2 foot apart, you can have a lesser purlin or 2x4, whatever, 2x4, 2x6, whatever. All of those things are different factors. And then from that point, then you're going to say, okay, how far apart this way can I put my purlins? Some of those factors are different. We just now posted a video talking about snow load and pitch. It's a very short video. I didn't get very many views on it, but it's talking about snow load and pitch, about why you would add an extra purlin in different cases. Might be worth checking out. It works specifically for metal buildings.
And we also, in planning what we were doing, we also took into consideration our porches, because our porches would add rigidity, and also how high up we were going.
Right.
And having that second story, that second level, like the floor would add rigidity.
Right.
And, well, how high are you going? So then that would factor in how you attach your pipe in the ground or to your piers, or however you do that. All of that are factors.
Right. Yeah.
So.
And that's the thing. The engineers never ask any of that. An engineer, so these are either engineers that are just very angry that that I didn't mention in the video, me going and consulting with an engineer, which of course we did, or they're very upset, or they're not really engineers. They're just, they know they can throw the word engineer out there. If you're on the internet, you can say whatever. So they throw that out there in order to have power behind whatever text they're saying. But the reality is there's no context. They didn't ask how far apart are your trusses, how thick the wall thickness of your pipe. Like we had one comment on there was talking about the pipe folding in. And I actually commented on it, and I told them that typically I would agree. I actually don't prefer building with pipe, especially if I'm building for someone else.
And that was actually going to lead to my next question.
Right, exactly. So very specifically, this pipe is a very thick wall pipe. This is a very strong pipe. The beauty in pipe, when it's thick walled, is it does have rigidity up and down. It's it's horizontal rigidity that it doesn't have. It does have flexibility, but it will bow a lot, and it's not going to have a lot of strength horizontally. But vertically, that straight down, that's why a lot of times you'll see a signpost or something made out of these pipes. First of all, it's got flexibility for the wind load that's coming on there. But secondly, it has all of that vertical strength. All the material is running straight up and down. So it's got a lot of strength there. And when you combine that, the 2 stories that are tied in, interlocking the pipes together, and then you combine the porch, because like she said, the porches all the way around there significantly stiffen this entire building and strengthen everything. None of those factors were factored in by the engineers. So the point is that when you do these things, add in all of these things in your mind. Go and look and talk to somebody that does know what they're talking about. I do know what I'm talking about, but I can't answer a question that says, what size I-beam do I use on my house? I need to know more context. I need to know, are you building a 40-foot house? Are you building a 70-foot house? Are you building a 10-foot house? All of those things matter. The second thing I need to know is how far apart are your trusses? What kind of C purlin are you going to use? Are you going to use wood or metal? All of those things matter. All right. What's another good question?
Well, this one, you've briefly touched on it already, but like, how do you lift it all up without bending everything? You briefly talked about it.
I did briefly. So picking it all up without bending everything. A lot of people worry about that. And that's why a lot of people say stand your poles up first. Okay. It's going to bend. It's going to flex, but it's not going to permanently bend. If you have welded this correctly, it is not going to permanently bend. If it permanently bends, then you've used too light of a material for however big your trusses are. Okay. And that's why you need to consult the right person, somebody that does know what they're talking about what sizes that you're using. Here's the deal. If you're building this for yourself, you can get away with a lot of things that aren't necessarily kosher, but talk to somebody. Like, I'm okay with guys saving money and going out and that's fine. I mean, we do the same thing, but I'm doing it from an experienced background. Okay. So talk to somebody that does know what they're talking about. Tell them what you're doing. Make sure that actually makes sense, because I have seen some guys on YouTube build some metal buildings, and the stuff they're doing, it does look like it's going to cave in. I am worried about that stuff. And they think that they're doing the same thing as we are. Like, oh, well, they're just taking material that they have and they're putting it all together. We're kind of doing that. So over the years, like our shop, we built our shop for extremely cheap. Okay. A very big, very nice shop for extremely cheap. Okay. And the reason we did that is over the course of years, we would buy and sell material. We would invest in material and
yeah, like this material we got before
way back in the day.
Inflation. And so,
yeah.
And that was kind of what, like, the next question,
right?
Whenever you get done.
And that exactly what she said. A lot of this material we bought before inflation. And so we were able to actually get it while the prices were low. All of this pipe, I bought thousands of dollars worth of pipe. I'm using the pipe that I need, and then I've sold other pipe. So what that does, it allows you to buy material in bulk, turn around and sell it, especially now that COVID is hit. I can sell the material for significantly higher, make a really good profit. And we're actually turning around, selling our house, and we're building our house for almost free. By the time we're done with the investments we've made and all like that, the house will almost be, it's not really free because we're buying the material, but when you're done, you calculate the bulk material that you bought, you cut off a little piece of that material, you use that material, you sell the rest of it, and because you bought it in bulk, you were able to get a good deal. And because you bought it, you bought it with patience. You didn't rush out and get everything. We knew it. We had a plan together from the time we were married. We've been working on these things this whole time and said, we've got a common goal. We're working towards that nonstop, continually. And so we've always kind of had that in mind. So anytime a piece of material comes up, my wife doesn't tell me, you should talk to me before you buy it. No, she trusts that I'm going and looking at that. Just like we put out a little video the other day. She went and bought some heifers. Okay. This is something, there's a trust thing. We come and talk to each other when we feel the need to talk to each other, when it's important to talk to each other. But some things, like I found a deal on this pipe. I mentioned it to her because I just wanted to share it with her. But she knows, and I know, that if I really feel like it's a really good deal, I don't have to necessarily mention it. So we do that. We go back and forth. And so my point in saying that is we're not just throwing this shop together with materials that we've had. We're using used materials, but we've been planning this all along. And so as we've been purchasing the materials, we've bought materials that would work in this scenario based on the house that we're building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess, I guess I don't really have any more questions. I'm pretty sure you've covered.
Pretty sure we covered all
everything. But this guy, he just says, I guess what we all know.
Okay.
Work equals time and time equals money.
Right.
And I guess for him, like he's saying, he thinks like pipe turns into a lot more work.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you've already said that it kind of depends on where your expertise lies.
Well, but he's right about that. Like, and that's what's interesting about that video is he commented that on TikTok, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That was a short clip, but if he would have watched the full video on YouTube, then he would have seen that I had already mentioned that when I'm building a building for somebody else and I'm charging them, I'm not going to use pipe. And the reason is because even if that customer can save some money on the pipe, the extra money that they're going to pay me to use pipe is typically not worth it. And it's hard to find thick-walled pipe. In this case, we do have thick-walled pipe. But when you're building something for yourself and it's your time, we're not, that's why the videos for building this building isn't done yet, because we haven't finished the building. The reason is because we're putting the building up as we have time. So she works really hard on our business. I work really hard on the farm side and on the investing side, and I work really hard on the welding side, and I work really hard on YouTube. And then she works really hard on the business side of this farm, as well as raising the chickens and things like that. And now she's taking care of most of the pigs and stuff. I still do some of that, but she's taking care of a lot of that. And so for the both of us, we're really busy. So we're not just going out and building this building for another customer. What we're doing is when we have spare time, like, the market shuts down for 3 weeks during Christmas. I don't get as much work, like welding work during Christmas. We go, every project we've done around here, we've done huge amounts of projects during the 3 weeks. It's like a period of time. And there's periods of time throughout the year where it's like, okay, there's really not a lot going on right now. So let's go out here and let's work on the house, or let's work on this.
Yeah.
And so my point is if you're building it for yourself and you're doing it when you have time, save the money, do it like that. But also we could have saved money by building the actual trusses from sawmilled lumber. But we analyzed that. We've done this enough that we both know, okay, it's going to take a little bit more time, but a lot less money to do the pipe, okay? And then with the trusses, it's going to take a little bit more money using the trusses that we're using in the video that y'all need to go back and watch, but it's going to take a lot less time. So we calculate those things based off of our own knowledge. And with all of that knowledge, we decided that pipe was our best bet. But he is right about that. Like with his comment, I don't disagree. I think I even said in the comment that I don't disagree at all. Like,
well, and I was just going to add too, like if you're somebody who would have to teach yourself how to weld in order to build you a house like this, then yeah, you might not be the best option. If you look at what you're good at, if you're a carpenter and you're good, then do everything with wood. That's
right.
It's your money is where your strength lies too.
Right.
Yes, time is money, but your money is where your strength lies. And if it's better for you to work your day job and hire somebody to do it, then that's better too.
And that's a good point too, because I make a lot of money. I do part-time welding jobs. I make a lot of money on those part-time jobs. There's a lot of things that I used to do that I won't do anymore. Okay. And the reason is because it's literally cheaper for me to pay somebody else and go to work than it is to try to save money by doing that job. But here's the part that he's not thinking about. I have a YouTube channel. Okay. And people watch that YouTube channel. People that don't necessarily know how to do these things, and they want to do these things. They want to use pipe. So part of the decisions that we make is for YouTube. We'll go ahead sometimes and go the harder route and do things a little bit, not the way that we would normally do it. Like y'all have even seen us, sometimes we'll have access to an excavator, and y'all have seen us do things without the excavator, even if we have it, or without the tractor, even if we have it. And that's specifically for my audience. That is specifically for y'all. We're going ahead and teaching you how to do it the harder route. Okay. So that's a factor you have to think of as well. And I understand from the viewer's perspective, you don't always think about the behind the scenes. You don't always think about, why are you doing it that way? You have, you used to be broke, but you're not now. So why are you doing it? Well, I'm doing it for people that are still broke, or that are still trying to save money, because we're not nowhere close to rich. I mean, we don't have that many subscribers. We're nowhere close to being what we could be in the future. We're happy, we're comfortable, but we're still trying to build. But at the same time, we are better off than we used to be. So some of our decisions have changed from what they used to. I mean, I came from a guy that used to literally go to a gas station that was closed, and I literally dropped a transmission and fixed the main front seal in a transmission in my truck in the gas station, because it had a cover and a concrete pad. So I could get under that cover, and it was raining outside. And I did it at night because I had to go back to work the next day. And this was my welding rig. Okay. So I had to change that front main seal, drop the transmission by myself, do all of that. And I did it in an old gas station. And I even had a police officer that showed up and asked what I was doing. And I said, well, I got into this, I've got a little bit of a problem, but I kind of can't leave now because I got to put the thing back together. Of course, I'm a 20-year-old guy trying to run a business. I probably shouldn't have done that, but that's the route I went. And so my point is I went from a guy that made sense to now being a guy that I wouldn't necessarily drop my own transmission. I still would if it did make sense. Okay. Like we have a job on a truck we've got. The labor of that job is going to cost $600 for the labor. Okay. And I can do the job in a few hours. Okay. So it makes sense for me to go and do that job myself. Just because I know that I can. It's not that complicated of a job. The reason it is for some people, well, I won't even go into there. It just, the point is that some things make sense and some things don't, the farther up you go. So I used to be extremely broke, struggling, no hope, no way to get out there. And now I'm not quite that way. So when people see me do certain things, it's to show the old me. It's because I wish I had a YouTube channel that would show me how to, when I was so broke that I had to use this or I had to do this. I wish I would have had a YouTube video that would have showed me that. And so a lot of times my videos are geared towards me when I was 13, 15, 17, 20, whatever, when the older me that was struggling. So that's kind of where they're at with that.
Yep. I don't think that I have any more. There's not really any more questions. You've covered it all. I will maybe in closing, what are next steps and what do people need to be on the lookout for house-wise?
Next steps for us on this house?
Yes.
So our next step is we're going to have videos teaching y'all how to do this. We're going to get a transit. We're going to figure out exactly where the height of each
leg.
No, I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, what length each leg needs to be. We're going to go to. I'm drawing a blank. What's it called? The metal pad.
Oh yeah, the pier.
The pier.
The pier.
You see, I have to refer to my wife to get knowledge on this. I should know that. I do know that. I'm just drawing a blank. So I have to go to each pier and figure out what height that is. We could have made them level. Sometimes we do. We chose not to in this case. And we'll talk about that in the upcoming video. That'll be the next step. Go around. Once we got that, we know for sure what that is. That will determine the length of each leg. Each leg will be different. So we'll cut each leg depending on what it should be. After that, it's getting everything together. That's the most complicated part. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason for a lot of people, it doesn't make sense for you to stand this house up like this. It might make sense for you to do one leg at a time, And one reason we didn't do one leg at a time is because the post will be very tall because of the height of the house, mm-hmm. And it just, there's a lot more that goes into that. We're going to have to be way up there welding that. If we do it this way, it makes it to where a man doesn't have to be up there welding. you got two guys on the bottom welding down on the ground with just something holding it up. It's safer. A lot of those things are better. You get the weld out and the solid structure on the ground, and then you go up and start putting everything else up. It's all just a different process and depends on what you have available to you. So our next step, and this will be one of the most important videos you need to be looking out for, will be standing the trusses. All of these videos are extremely important, okay? We're going to stand the trusses up. After that, we've got to at least on that day, we have to put, the day you stand the trusses up, they all have to get welded at the base, and you have to get at least a couple purlins tying them all together. You have to do that. It is important to do it right, the procedure. You can go to your next day before you go any farther. I like to get as much done as I can. But your following day before a storm hits, you've got to go ahead and get the rest of those purlins on. So that'd be the next step, get the purlins on. And then you could either put your tin on or you could start to build your porches. For us, since it's so tall, I would love to see the porches get put up as soon as possible for stability. But worst case, we'll just build some temporary supports and support the whole house that way. One way or the other, it will be supported. And then after that, you put your tin on. And your goal is to do this in a 3 to 1 week process, 3 day to 1 week process. That's going to be kind of the following steps through. Beyond that, there's a lot of other steps, but we'll go into that for detail. But be looking out, guys. We do plan to do more videos on the building of the house, along with building a lot more things here around the homestead and on our farm business. Guys, thank you so much. I'm sorry that I'm doing this with a cold. Hope it didn't bother y'all too much. But we will be coming back with more videos on this. Please, guys, I hope I addressed all the comments. I know I didn't address every single one of them, but if you have another comment that's burning on your mind, drop it in this comment section. I love to see y'all's comments, and it's super helpful to everyone else. Sometimes y'all address things that I didn't address, Sometimes you'll remind me of something I meant to put out there, but also you'll teach me things. So a lot of times I've learned stuff. Like a guy on the channel, he'll say something and be like, man, I've actually done it this way. And I'll be like, what in the world? Why didn't I ever think about that? So it's a great learning community. Please put your comments down there. Let us know what kind of videos you want to see. Let us know what your experience, your background. Put some stuff in there. Tell us where you've been, where you're coming from. Is this your first, are you thinking about building your first house or a small building? Are you just watching this? If you're just watching this for entertainment, put that in the comments. Talk to me. I want to hear more from you. Guys, thank y'all so much. Like, subscribe. It does help so much. We really, truly appreciate all of the help.